Welcome to another monthly Beyond Zero Emissions discussion group. Firstly, we would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the Kulin Nations and pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We'd also like to thank the University of Melbourne Energy Research Institute, our Zero Carbon Australia project partners, for this great venue. For anyone that hasn't been to a BZE discussion group before, BZE is a climate change solutions research and communications organisation. Our goal is to transform Australia from a 19th century fossil fuel-based economy to a 21st century renewable-powered clean tech economy. Our projects include Zero Carbon Australia research, Repower Australia talks, media work, education programs and much more. We're always looking for more volunteers to help, particularly with our research, so come and talk to us afterwards if you'd like to get involved. This discussion group is a forum for climate change solutions with presentations by experts in the field and is held on the first Monday of every month, usually. This month we have Andrew Reddaway with us. Andrew is an Energy Analyst with the Alternative Technology Association, the ATA. He has expert in modelling energy and business operations, including experience working with the Australian Energy Market Operator, the AEMO. He was also a key contributor to BZE's Zero Carbon Australia Buildings Plan. Andrew has created Sunulator, a free tool which estimates the economic feasibility of a solar system. Sunulator is a simulation tool that can help you plan a grid-connected solar project. Based on half-hourly consumption and generation data, and electricity tariff information, it calculates the impact on your electricity bill and projects the savings over a 30-year time frame. Financial results include payback period, net present value, and return on investment. Sunulator is designed to assist community organisations to install solar systems via additional investment options. Would you please welcome Andrew?
Thanks everyone for coming. My name's Andrew and it's been 2 years since my last presentation here. It sounds a bit like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but it's actually true. I was here about 2 years ago. At the time I was working with AEMO, the Australian Energy Market Operator, and I was presenting on the forecast that we just prepared for the uptake of solar PVs, solar photovoltaic systems in Australia. So it's probably it'd probably be fun just to comment on that and see how we're actually tracking against those forecasts. So could I see a show of hands for everyone who's got solar at home in some capacity? Yeah, that's pretty good. It's pretty high. Yeah, I think around Australia it's about 1.2 million household systems now for this is solar electric. So that's getting up to 20-25% of the suitable houses out there, I think. Which is actually a bit higher than where my forecasts were at that point to how many houses would have solar PV on the roof already. So yeah, I predicted a bit of a slowdown after all the feed-in tariffs dropped and the government incentives dropped, but actually the growth still continued fairly strong over the last couple of years. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see over the years to come how that proceeds. So yeah, even though I was volunteering to contribute to the Beyond Zero Emissions building plan, I haven't made it to many of these in discussion forums as a participant. I feel a bit like Elle Macpherson, who says she didn't read any books except for the ones she wrote herself. I'm kind of like that. I'm only here for the ones that I'm presenting myself. So, yeah. Okay, so the agenda. If we go down to how does it work, that I'm planning to move fairly quickly through to that point, and try and give an overview of what Sunulator is all about. And so if you feel like you've had enough, then you can feel free to leave after that. But yeah, after that I'll be going into a little more detail. So yeah, at the start of how does it work is where it goes into a little more detail. And so probably best if you hold off on too many questions. If you've got a burning one, then sure ask, but I'm hoping to get into more questions after we get to the how does it work space down there. Can everyone hear me okay, by the way? Good. Oops. Oh no, that's right. So I'm from the ATA, the Alternative Technology Association. So we're I think most of you would have probably come across us, but for those who haven't, we're a not-for-profit organisation, and our mission is to assist people to make sustainable choices with, especially in the home household sort of environment. We've got a membership base and we've got branches around Australia. We give a lot of advice to our members and also to the general public. We've got a policy and research team, which is the area that I'm in. So we do some small consulting type work and research publications and that type of thing. And the flavour of the moment is our international projects initiative. So we've got a bunch of volunteers who go to East Timor and install small solar systems in remote areas for lighting primarily and some mobile phone charging. And we're actually a finalist in the Google grant for that's up to 500,000. So hopefully everyone can vote for us to put more solar systems in East Timor, and spread the word if you can. You can also vote on as many devices as you like. So. I haven't mentioned yet our publications, which is probably where we're best known. So Renew magazine, we've published that since 1980, and that focuses on energy efficiency, especially retrofitting, DIY, all that kind of stuff. The whole range of sort of self-sufficiency, energy efficiency, renewable energy. And Sanctuary magazine is more around sustainable homes and the design of homes, that type of thing. We've got a bunch of other publications as well, and booklets on solar hot water, solar PV, lots of other things. All right, so Sunulator, well, it's a simulation tool. It's free for community use, so you can go on our website and download it. We built it using funding from the City of Sydney and also the Lord Mayor's Charitable Fund. So that was great, being able to secure that, to put some effort into a reasonably detailed solar calculator. It's for a grid-connected solar project, so it hasn't got the functionality to cover an off-grid situation where you've got batteries and you might need to plan for 2 or 3 days of autonomy on if the clouds come over. It's not really for that. It's for a grid-connected system. It focuses on the economic feasibility, and it's I don't know if any of you are familiar with our Tankulator product, but it's a similar concept. With the Tankulator, it's helping you work out what size of rainwater tank would make sense, and based on the rainfall in your area, your catchment area on your roof, how much water you're using in your house. So Sunulator has the same sort of concept, but it's a bit more complex than Tankulator, which is inherent with all the variables you've got with a solar system. Now, at the moment, I mentioned the funding came from the City of Sydney and the Lord Mayor's Charitable Fund. So those two funding sources were specifically for New South Wales and Victoria, respectively. So at the moment, those are the only two states that Sunulator covers. Oh yeah, as I mentioned, it's only for grid connected, and it's also good to note on the scope that if you want to put in a grid connected system, then you can't only use Sunulator and then go and put solar panels on your roof. You're going to need to get a proper system design done, taking into account the detailed components and the voltages and the currents and everything. So you'll need a solar installer to do that. Sunulator will give you a good start though on what sort of system you want to put in place. So what do you need to run Sunulator? You need to have Microsoft Excel. The reason for that was to meet the time frames and the budget of the project that we had. Well, we had to get something up and running pretty quickly. So Excel was the best option for us to do that. You'll see towards the end of the project, we would like to convert it into a web-based system, but that's probably some way down the track. You need to run macros, the Excel programs, so you need to have some permissions on your computer to do that. And some experience and knowledge is good as well. So you'd want to have used spreadsheets before and have some understanding of electricity and what sort of units electricity is measured in, a bit of financial understanding, that sort of thing. All right, so what can it tell you? Well, the first thing is it allows you to compare multiple scenarios. So you might want to compare, okay, if I had no solar system, that's one scenario. You might want to look at a few different sizes, so you're not sure whether you want a 2 kilowatt or a 4 kilowatt or a 10 kilowatt, and you might want to compare those side by side against each other. Sunulator will allow you to do that. Or you might have different places you could put solar panels on. Different orientations like north or east or west, or different tilts. You might have different options for how you set it up. You could do those as different scenarios and compare them against each other. Or different finance arrangements. If you pay for the system up front, or if you go into a solar finance product like a lease or a power purchase agreement, then Sunulator will cover those as well. All right, so here's an example of an output from Sunulator. I'm jumping straight into the outputs just to give an overview, and then we'll get into how it works after that. So down the bottom there are four scenarios. So there's the business as usual with no solar, 20 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt, and 99 kilowatt. So that's not a household there, that's a commercial building. Yeah. There probably are some households that have 20 kilowatts, but not many. The axis there is an annual electricity bill. So yeah, again, hopefully none of you are spending that much in a year, but so their business as usual bill without any solar is nearly 50,000. If they put on a 20 kilowatt system, then it's going to reduce their bill. A 50 kilowatt system, a 99 kilowatt system will reduce it further. So that's one of the things you'd be looking for out of Sunulator. It's not all about money, of course. There's other motivations to put solar systems on. So Sunulator also gives you tons of carbon dioxide per year, and that it offsets, just based off a relatively simple calculation on the carbon intensity of Australian electricity, and converts that to an equivalent number of cars off the road, and just to turn it into something a bit more meaningful. It's surprising how much carbon cars put out actually when you compare it against electricity. All right, here's another chart out of Sunulator. The blue line is the total annual electricity consumption, again for those 4 scenarios. The total size of the bar is how much electricity the solar system would generate in a year. So for the 20 kilowatt system, you're not generating as much electricity as you consume over the whole year. But for the 50 kilowatt, you're exceeding that. 99, you're going way above that. The green and the orange is breaking up that electricity generation into how much of that solar generation is being used on site within the building. So it's going straight into running computers or lifts or machines or whatever. And the orange is electricity that couldn't be used at the point in time that it was generated. So it's excess to requirements, and it's been exported out to the grid, out to the poles and wires in the street. So that's a comparison that has a fairly big impact on the economics of a solar system. You can also get out some more detailed results from the simulation that it does. So this is a chart that's showing the generation from the solar panels, the electricity generation, and it's looking at a specific day in January, and it happens to be a cloudy day, cloud in the afternoon. So as the sun comes up around 7:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, it starts generating. It's sort of following a bell curve, but when the clouds hit, then in the afternoon it's not generating so much. Then it jumps up a bit more in the late afternoon. So that's giving you a bit of a sneak preview of how Sunulator works. It does it on a detailed half-hourly simulation basis. You also get financial projections. So with this chart here, it's showing the savings from the scenarios with the solar systems compared to the business as usual scenario where there's no solar. The x-axis is years out into the future. So what they're saying is that your discounted cash flow benefit, so how much you're ahead in financial terms after 30 years for a 50 kilowatt system is $80,000. So that's what that project would be worth to you to go ahead and do it. I might jump back to this chart later on after we get into how it works. Where has it been used? Well, it's been on our website since June now, and we don't know exactly how many people have downloaded it and used it, but it has been the most popular page on our website. It was averaging about 50 page views per day, so it's had a fair bit of use. Some of the users that we've had contact with and some knowledge of, there's a Tariff community solar farm up near Bega in the southern coast of New South Wales. So that's an interesting one. They've started gathering investment for that, and they're actually going to set up a solar system where the solar panels spell out the word imagine when viewed from the air. So the idea is that if you're flying into Merimbula Airport, then you'll see that.
Yeah.
There's a West Australian Aboriginal community that we're talking to at the moment, and we're trying to help them get a solar system off the ground with investment from some investors. We had a look at a community development at the Black Forest Timber Mill up near Wood End. It turned out to be a bit cloudy up there and not that attractive from an economic point of view, not too bad either, but that's on hold at the moment. We've done some in-house ATA consulting research projects using Sunulator, including some community housing in Darabin. So yeah, it's had a fair bit of use. It's been tested. It's proven to work pretty well, and yeah, it's going along fairly strongly. Any questions up to this point? No? Great. All right, so how does it work? Oh, actually, I was thinking I might ask a question there and see if we can get your brains working a bit. So obviously we have to give some information to Sunulator. We have to input some data. So anyone got any suggestions what sort of information we'd have to tell?
Have you had any special feedback from the timber mill?
What do you mean by special feedback?
Well, in terms of energy usage for them and time patterns, given when they're using electricity.
Well, it's actually an old timber mill which is shut down, and
okay. So what's replacing it?
Well, the plan is to build a community centre which would also have a range of things. It was a accommodation, restaurant, various bits and pieces. So it's only a proposal at this stage. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of information that we would have to input to Sunulator. Yes, Stephen?
Weather patterns and grid connectivity?
Yep. Weather patterns, yep.
Solar reefs.
Solar.
The solar reefs, how much sunshine there is.
Yep, how much sunshine there is, yep, that has to go in. Yep.
Energy consumption per annum?
Yep, that's right.
Probably broken down into greater resolution if you can.
Yep, energy consumption. Yep.
Do you link into all that meteorological weather patterns rather than having to gather that yourself?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so we actually purchased some data off the Bureau of Meteorology. It was a very big data set. It cost just as much to purchase it for one location as for the whole of Australia. So we just got it for the whole of Australia. And that data's captured from satellites, where they're taking images of Australia and inferring from the photos what the sunlight intensity is on the ground on a 5 kilometre grid all over Australia. So we purchased all that, and we've built into Sunulator about 45 different locations across Victoria and in New South Wales, where it's which you can choose from a drop-down box, and it's got built into it a 1 year's worth of sunlight intensity data on a half-hourly basis. Yeah.
You'll need the roof layout and angles, and for the financial output, you'll need either to make some assumptions about interest rates or get the user to put those in.
Yep.
You'll need to know whether they're commercial or domestic to know whether there's tax deductible.
Yeah, good point on the tax. The tax side is, the further we looked into it, the more we realised it was a can of worms, because there are so many variations in individual situations. So Sunulator,
they can write the investment off.
As a tax deduction. So that would be through depreciation, and we have built in depreciation into one section, but most of the reports don't include a tax impact.
Shadow mortgage or whatever, and all the other combinations.
Any yes.
Yeah, the sort of time of day that different electricity is used for.
Yep.
Pretty important.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
If you're working nights only.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good coverage. Yep. So you have to know your location, electricity consumption, Nobody mentioned the tariffs, how much your electricity actually costs from the grid. That's a pretty important one. Yeah, the details of your proposed solar system, which way it's facing and how big it is and all that. The cost of the project, how much it's going to cost to install it. And yeah, the sunshine data, you can include that in the location there, I guess. Here's a nice smart meter. It's being in Victoria, there's been a lot of complaints about smart meters and the cost of the rollout and all that stuff. But if you want to do something like Sunulator and you can get data off your smart meter, then it's actually very helpful. Okay, so how does it work? It works by simulating an entire year in half-hourly intervals. So the starting point is the consumption data that goes in. If you can provide it half-hourly consumption data from your smart meter, then that's the best way. If you don't have that, then there's a facility in Sunulator where you input, well, how much do we use each month, how much electricity, so you get that seasonality over the year. Maybe you're using more in winter or more in summer, and you also input how much do we use during the day. So you can put in, say, a handful of different categories. You might say morning, afternoon, evening, night time. How many kilowatt hours, or actually you say what percentage of your consumption is in each of those, so you can build up a profile like that. The typical residential electricity consumption pattern is like this blue curve here. Not quite that exaggerated, but you normally have a morning peak when everyone's getting up and turning on heaters or making their breakfast or whatever. Especially if there's no one home during the day, then electricity consumption drops off. Then everyone comes home and you have a bigger peak in the evening. So that electricity consumption is the starting point. So Sunulator has to have that. Either you import your smart meter data, or you tell Sunulator what those patterns are, and it builds up that year of half-hourly electricity consumption. Then it goes through and it looks at the climate data over a whole year, and it says, okay, the 1st of January was sunny, 2nd of January was cloudy in the afternoon, 3rd of January was cloudy in the morning, and it works out how much generation you would have if you had that solar system each half hour into the future, and it matches up the consumption and the generation. Yeah, question at the back.
Just to understand, so it takes a specific year's solar data?
Yeah, good question. So the data that we purchased off the Bureau of Meteorology was going back to the mid-90s. There were some gaps in there, but we had many years of data for each location. So obviously some years are sunnier than average and some years are cloudier than average, so you don't want to pick one that's too sunny or too cloudy. So what you do is you build up a typical meteorological year. You don't just average the 1st of January off all of your 1st of Januaries, because then you miss the variability. So instead, what you do is you take each month in turn. So you say, okay, let's look at January. So you go to January 98, and you go to January 2000, 2001, 2002. You do some stats on each of those Januaries and see like what was the total sunshine or the average sunshine over each of those Januaries. And the one which was closest to the average is the January that you pick. For your typical year. And then you look at February and you do the same thing. So your January might come from January 98, and your February might come from February 2011, March might come from March 2000, whichever ones were the most typical, and you splice them all together to make a typical year. Yes, so we did that for each location that you can pick. Yeah.
Where did your demand profile come from?
Oh yeah, the demand, the electricity consumption.
Yeah. That'd be like a winter profile, or a summer profile might be completely different.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you import your smart meter,
So it's
then
based on your own data. Yeah.
that's the best way. Yeah. Most of the electricity distributors in Victoria, there's 5 of them. So it's like Gemina, City Power, SP AusNet, Powercore, United Energy. Each of them have some way that you can get smart meter data. Most of them have a portal that you can log on the internet and download the data. It's in City Power and Powercore. They're
behind. They don't have a website interface.
Yeah, they don't, but they do have a little-known email address that you can.
I've tried that, and they send the data back to you in like PDF form, not even like a CSV. It's like it's useless to you.
That you must have emailed the wrong place because.
No, the City Power.
Oh, okay. Was that recent?
It was probably about a year or maybe 18 months ago, but it was. It was quite annoying actually because
I've done it successfully several times, and I've got actual comma delimited text file data back off them. So that's strange.
In a specific format?
Well,
too technical for now.
Basically, you get your smart meter data off your distributor, and it's going to be up to you to format that into the format that Sunulator wants. So you have to have a bit of skills in spreadsheets. Yeah.
Excuse me, Andrew.
Yes.
You have the usage from 9 to 6 as a flat line. Is that just typical or representative, or is that actual? Because I couldn't see that being flat.
No, this is just a PowerPoint mock-up. Yeah. But I analysed one of our neighbours' data recently, and it was actually fairly flat from maybe not 9 to 6, but sort of 9 to 4 sort of thing. They had quite low power consumption, electricity consumption over that period. Yeah. There was another question.
I was just going to say that we've just discovered the portal.
Okay.
To get our hourly and half-hourly and stuff.
Okay.
From United Energy.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't that easy.
Yeah.
No, they put various barriers.
Yeah.
That's quite good.
Okay. I was in a consultation meeting with SP AusNet, who are now called AusNet Services, recently, and the stats on how many of their customers actually use the portal, it's very tiny.
Well, I don't tell anybody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I make it hard for you to do it.
Yeah. So it'd be great if it was easier. That's for sure. Yeah. All right. So we've got electricity consumption and we've got generation, half hour by half hour. And so what Sunulator does is it compares the consumption and the generation against each other. So if we're here somewhere, then the consumption's higher than the generation. So we're going to be importing or exporting from the grid at that point. Importing, yeah. Now we get to like 10 a.m. or something, and we're generating more than we're consuming, so it's going to be exporting to the grid. And in fact, you can have a half hour in which you have some import and some export, which is something a lot of people don't realise, because you might have had 10 minutes, for example, when you're exporting, and 20 minutes when you're importing, and your import register on your meter will record some import, and your export will record some export. So yeah, you can have both in the same half-hour interval, and Sunulator makes some allowance for that as well. What it then does is applies the tariffs onto that. So for for this half-hour interval, it's all input for argument's sake. You can put into Sunulator what your tariff is. It might be a flat tariff, 25 cents over the whole day, or it might be a time of use tariff where you're 7 to 11 on weekdays, you're paying 30 cents, and then outside that you're paying 15 cents, for example. So it takes that tariff and it says, well, okay, we're importing 1 kilowatt hour at 22 cents. So for that half-hour interval, we're incurring 22 cents, and just works through the whole year that way. When it comes to here, it says, okay, we're exporting 3 kilowatt hours. So what's the feed-in tariff, which you have to tell it as well. If your feed-in tariff's 8 cents, then 3 kilowatt hours at 8 cents per kilowatt hour, so you've earned 24 cents, and it works that all the way through. In fact, if you've got good eyes, you probably notice this strange green rectangle here. This was a slide that we've had for a few years now, and that used to say at a premium feed-in tariff rate. So yeah, that so previously you wanted to have all this export in the middle of the day, and that was great. And it's still great if you're on one of those contracts from a few years ago. But if you're installing solar now, that's not what you want. You don't want to be exporting all this during the middle of the day because you're not earning much money from it.
So 7,500 readings a year with the solar radiation being counted for and the tariffs. I think I feel a new computer coming on.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. You might struggle on a tablet. We've had some problems with Apple tablets, but on an actual laptop or computer, you won't be waiting too long.
So your panels are on the east and west instead of the middle.
Yep.
Instead of north.
Yep. And that's something you can use Sunulator to model what the impact is. Yeah. Because I haven't got a slide on where you input the solar panel data, but you can put in 2 separate arrays. So you can say, well, there's only one and it's all north facing and it's 3 kilowatts, 30 degree chill. Or you can say, well, we're going to put half of it east at 30 degree tilt. Let's say 2 kilowatts east and 2 kilowatts west. Yeah, and it'll calculate the generation from the east array and the west array separately, and then add them up. So yeah, you can see what the impact is on the payback. Yeah. So that's basically how it works.
Can you do 3 orientations, east, west and north?
Sorry, no. Yeah. Once you get into that, then you'll have to make a compromise. Just say it's all north or it's all east or west. So yeah.
But isn't that what a lot of people are doing nowadays because of that?
Yeah.
Trying to generate more income.
There's probably not that many houses that have clear roof surfaces facing all 3 directions without much shading on them, but yeah, there'd be some, yeah. Oh yeah, also your the standard string inverters that most people are going for only have 2 inputs, 2 maximum power point trackers. So unless you're going for microinverters, which is a whole other conversation, it's a bit tricky to split it over 3.
DC converters or the TIGO.
Yeah. Which are becoming more popular now.
Which is what I'm bringing next week.
Oh really? Okay. Okay. So community solar. Community solar projects are fairly new development in Australia anyway. In Europe and also in the US there's a lot of them around, but there's not many that are up and running at the moment in Australia, probably only a handful. So the concept there is rather than putting solar panels on your own roof, maybe you're in an apartment block, or it's overshadowed, or you're renting, or you've got some barrier to putting solar panels on your own roof. You could invest money through a community organisation and invest in a project which puts solar panels on another roof.
Or a shared roof space. This is why we're here. Because it's the very thing we're interested in.
Okay, great. Yep. So mostly they're focusing on sort of medium scale, so not like, a household size, not a massive solar farm with acres of panels everywhere, but you maybe on a factory or a warehouse or a nursing home or a school, it's something along those lines.
Is there an upper limit to the size of the installation?
Probably the main limit is the rebates for the for the renewable energy. Sorry?
With us, most of it will be consumed on site. But no, in terms of the modelling, is there an upper limit in terms of the size of the...
In terms of the modelling?
Simulation.
No. Simulation, no.
No. But if you go greater than 99 kilowatts, then you can't claim your small technology certificate rebates up front. The only way you can get any carbon value for it is by trading on the market, which is problematic at the moment.
I think most of what we would hope to generate would be used on site.
Yeah.
And not generally.
We're talking about common area and facilities being covered, not the entire residential unit system. But,
Okay. So that's what it's about. Is and in fact, this was the real driver for Sunulator in the first place. With the funding that we got, it was really with community solar in mind. So, say you've got a community organisation. They're taking investment money off people, using that to install solar on a roof, and then the host site, the electricity consumer that has the solar panels on, is enjoying bill savings off that, but they're also paying some money back to the community organisation, and that's passed back to investors as investment return. There's a few different project structures for how you can do that. There's like a power purchase agreement where the organisation that's putting the solar panels on is actually metering how much electricity is coming out of the solar system and going into the host site and charging that site 20 cents per kilowatt hour or some rate, and they're paying a bill every quarter. So they're paying a bill to their electricity retailer for what they get off the grid, and they're also paying a bill to the community organisation for what they get out of the solar system. Or there's like a loan model where you basically, the community organisation is lending money to the host site, and they're paying back repayments on the loan. There's a couple of different ways you can structure that, and in Sunulator there's a space where you can choose what kind of financial structure is in place, and put in variables for how much it's costing, that kind of thing. Yes.
On part of community's solar power, Ranges Energy.
Macedon Ranges around there?
No, in the other ranges.
Okay, yep.
That area, but we operate, we just started now.
Okay.
We've been around for a little while. It's probably the first project that we might apply. With all of us and purchase agreements and loan lease. The way we work is a 10-year lease.
10-year lease, yeah.
And over that period, the customer pays less than the normal rate, rather than paying 26 cents, but pay less than the amount that they say. But it also say, hey, we are using green energy.
Right, yeah.
So that's a promotion for them, that they're using a product that needs that.
Great.
Then at the end of the 10-year period, they can either decide to pay off the balance, which is minimal, or alternative, just keep going, or it becomes theirs over a certain period.
Great.
That's the way we operate.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
And similarly, I mean, you probably, a lot of would have heard of Edwin Wind Farm. That's a big project. That's been around for quite a few years now. That's paid off. Getting the investors in that, getting some return already. 10% return.
Excellent.
That's quite different. That's a much larger project. In our case, would be less, certainly less than 100 kilowatts system, and we're looking to sell from 10 kilowatts system up.
Okay, thanks for that. And what sort of buildings are you looking at, if you don't mind saying?
Well, we looked at an orchard at one stage.
Yeah.
Still negotiating. We're looking at small factories, community houses.
Yeah.
As you said, retirement villages.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to. There's a few things actually we have in meeting tomorrow to finalise some of the information, some of the legal procedures.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a fairly new space. There's a group called C4CE, something for community energy, which the ATA is actually part of, and I think it's Council for Community Energy. And yeah, we held our first conference in June this year up in Canberra. So it was the CEC, the Congress, the Community Energy Congress. Yeah. So there's heaps of great ideas flying around. There are some that have actually got successful models up and running. One thing to watch out for that we've heard from other groups is they go and approach these orchards or these factories and say, okay, we reckon your roof's really good to put solar panels on, and we could provide this loan to you, and they go through lots of negotiations and they educate the orchard or the factory, and then after a while the factory works out, oh, hang on, yeah, it is a good idea. Well, why don't we just put it on ourselves and we don't need these guys? So,
provided they have the finance.
That's right. That's right.
Because the Rangers Energy takes care of the finance, installation, maintenance, and all of that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if they've got finance, fine. But if they don't have the finance, they believe in solar power, they want to store solar power for the consumption.
Yeah, that's right. That is.
And it's all run by volunteers at this stage. There's no, we've got experts in the various fields necessary. In the committee. So,
If the costs are low, then that's great, because obviously if there's any costs involved in the finance arrangement, then it's eating into the overall solar benefits for either the host site or the investors. So yeah, it's how do you slice up that pie of those benefits off the bills? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really clear as community solar works. Like if you've got a number of houses in sort of a development site, wouldn't they all have their own individual meters?
Yes.
How does the actual solar energy get to them?
Yeah, that's not so easy to set up a situation like that as a community. Yeah, community energy project. Yeah, the Aboriginal community I mentioned earlier is a good one, because as far as the electricity retailer and the grid distribution company are concerned, it's all just 1 metre. And so they build as one entity, and they have sub-billing through all their tenants. An embedded network. So typically that's like caravan parks and shopping centres and things like that. So embedded networks like that are a good candidate. and also just large energy consumers like factories, sewerage sites, water treatment plants. But the issue with the large the large electricity consumers is they're often paying very low electricity rates. So that means that the benefit of the solar generation is offsetting low cost electricity, so it's hard to make the economics stack up. So yeah, you really want someone who's paying relatively high electricity rates. They don't have the money to go and do it themselves, or they don't want to do it themselves and pay that money up front. And you also want them to have a fairly constant electricity consumption. If they're only using electricity 2 days a week, then for 5 days of the week it's all going out to the grid. So the more constant their consumption is, like a water treatment plant or a retirement village or something, the better it is.
So is there a spot for demand charges in the tariff structure?
Yeah, there is. Yep. You can choose a flat rate tariff or a time of use tariff or a demand based tariff. Yeah. And if the electricity consumer is paying a demand tariff, then it'll automatically work out the impact of the bill from having a lower maximum demand through the year, whenever that occurs from the solar.
Because there's a lot of talk about introducing your demand charges for smaller users, not just large users.
Yeah.
It's a thought now. It's not.
It is.
Nothing been proposed, but
yeah.
It's possible that sometime in the future that could occur.
It could. Yeah, and that's already in Sunulator. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're interested in putting out a community solar project together as well.
Okay.
Similar to the model this gentleman was explaining. So we're initially thinking under PPA.
Oh yes.
You mentioned that there are other models as well, possibly PPA and the loan model.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
It's really around different flavours of the loan model. It's questions about who pays. How does the feed-in tariff work and those sorts of things. What is the ownership going to transfer back to the electricity consumer at some point? So there is also a model that no one's done yet, but there's been talk about, which is where the community group actually acts as the electricity retailer. So then the electricity consumer, the host site, when they pay for their grid electricity, they're paying the community organisation. And when they pay for the solar electricity, they're paying the community organisation as well. And so it's only one bill. But becoming an electricity retailer is a massive undertaking, and there's massive financial requirements. It is possible to get an exemption, but it all gets more complicated if you go down that path.
Okay, so basically it's the loan model and the PPA model with variation.
Those are the main ones at the moment. But if you have a look at the Sunulator website, there's a couple of presentations there which talk about that. And in fact, our last edition of Renew was a whole community energy edition. Yeah, oh, that's good.
Well, it's good that advert out. We're looking for a good site, so.
Okay.
Can I ask, does the modelling include maintenance costs?
Yes, it does. Yeah, you can build in an annual maintenance allowance in there, and it also allows for replacement of inverters, panels, and other equipment at a user-nominated amount and a user-nominated frequency as well. How many years in between replacements? Yep. I've got questions everywhere. I think you were first.
Just one point about the financing options. The other one is the lease finance.
Yeah.
Where you have fixed amounts over the life of the lease, and then at the end of the lease, the rooftop host can purchase for a specified amount.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, if you use your calculations for the life expectancy of the solar collector? The second question on that is, how does it fail? Is it gradual taper off, or is it sudden abject failure?
It's both, yeah. The solar panels, the output reduces over time, and you can specify that as a separate value year by year if you like. Normally you just say it decreases by 0.5% of the original capacity each year. So you can put that in. And then you also put in a cost allowance for replacing the panels, which you can specify your own amount and your own frequency of panel replacement. So it would normally be 20 years or 25 years, something like that. Yeah.
The outputs you showed, they have a kind of spurious sort of precision to
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Would you consider allowing input distributions and generating, using Monte Carlo simulation to generate some output distributions?
Considered it, yeah. It already takes a reasonable time to run. If you're using a Monte Carlo approach to do a large number of simulations, then that time would have really sort of blown out. And yeah, that's probably getting into a bit more sophistication than what we could do at that stage. Also, probably the major uncertainties are things like costs and tariffs or future tariffs. There's probably fairly big assumptions you're going to make anyway. So whatever we do in the details of the simulation, the variability in that is probably going to be outweighed by the unknowns in the inputs itself. So yeah, probably decided that the value for the Monte Carlo approach probably wasn't there. But we can talk about that afterwards, mate.
What assumptions do you make for future tariffs? I think that's a pretty uncertain field.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yep. Basically, the same table where you put in your panel degradation year by year, you can also put in increases or decreases in your future tariffs year by year. And it splits it out into the fixed component of the bill and the variable component per kilowatt hour. So you can put in your own assumptions. The default is just a 1% per year compounding increase into the future. It's quite interesting. The latest AEMO forecasts for over the next 10 years basically flat electricity prices on a real basis. The thinking is that all the increases in prices over the last several years, the increases in the poles and wires and those other factors have basically run their course, and it's going to flatten off. But I wonder about the death spiral effect and whether that's going to lead to an increase. So you basically have to make your own assessment of that one. Yeah.
So you remember the graph of the Green Mountain where you're not doing much with it, especially even at 8 cents, it's not quite viable.
Yep.
So storage batteries, in other words, take that energy to store the cost of batteries at the moment is still a bit high.
Yep.
So longer term, that's what you do. You plug in your batteries, store them up, so you flatten out the whole thing. So much better going.
It's a very hot topic at the moment, and when I built the logic for Sunulator, I actually built in allowance for battery charging and discharge as well, but it hasn't got the functionality in there yet. That's a future development, but if we can get some funding to put that in, we'd love to build it. Yeah.
You've got a plug-in battery model hole.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. All right, we spent a long time on this slide. Might move on a bit. But that's great that there's so much interest in community solar. So this is an example of how one model would work. So you've got your electricity consumer on the left there. That's consumer from the sense of the entity that consumes the electricity. It might be a massive factory, but it's still considering a consumer. So they're paying their electricity retailer for their electricity. if the community group comes in, this is like one flavour of the loan model. So they're lending money to the consumer. The consumer's paying the solar installer, and then the consumer's paying interest every month or every quarter or whatever. And they're also paying, and they're still paying their retailer for grid electricity, but a lot less than what they were before because they're not getting so much from the grid. So that's just a diagram showing one example of how a community solar project could work. Now, as a gentleman up near the back was saying previously, a common community solar setup is where you've got like a 10-year lifespan on the project. So what this chart's showing here is the investors are going to fork out $80,000 in year zero up front, and then each year into the future they're going to be recouping some of that investment through payments coming back from the electricity consumer, the host site. So their net position on their investment is going to get closer and closer to break even until in year 8 they're breaking even, and then in the last couple of years they make their returns off that investment. So that's a chart straight out of Sunulator. So you can put in those variables and play around with your scenarios in different sizes of your solar system and all that stuff, and see how the different scenarios compare. All right, so we've talked a lot about larger scale community solar investments, but what about householders? Well, yes, you can use Sunulator, but as I mentioned previously, it does require a bit of knowledge and a bit of persistence. It's not something that you can just throw in a few minutes and throw in a few numbers and 5 minutes later you'll have an answer. It'll take you probably an hour or two to really work through it all. But if you're considering spending, many thousands of dollars on a system, then that's probably time well spent, I would suggest. But you do have to have Excel and some skills to use it.